This anti-wheel propaganda has got to stop. I've seen a lot of people with the takes recently that if you're running wheels in a non-wheel based strategy, that you're not only hurting your odds to win, you're actually increasing your opponent's odds to win, which is absolutely insane. So today we're going to be debunking some of those arguments. We're also going to be talking about dedicated strategies that want to run wheels that are not wheel strategies. There's a lot of different archetypes that benefit off of wheels, so we're going to be talking about them today, when to utilize them, when to not utilize them, and we're also going to be talking about when to cast a wheel and when not to cast a wheel, because wheels are, at the end of the day, a skill-based card. These are cards that allow you to discard your entire hand, and everybody discards their entire hand, and then everybody's going to draw a determined amount of cards, right? Some of it is equal to the player with the most cards, some of it's just straight up 7 cards, and then some of it is the amount of cards in your hand minus 1, right? So everybody's drawing cards here. So if you play them at the wrong time, it can actually increase your opponent's chances of winning, but I will argue that 90% of the time, if you're playing it when you need to, it actually increases your odds. So click on that whatnot link, get your free $15, get 10% off all of your proxies whenever you use code DT4D, and last but not least, if you guys would like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps me out. Let's get into it by talking about the 21 cards argument. This is the argument that a wheel effect will draw your opponents 21 cards while only drawing you 7 cards, effectively giving them a lot more ammunition to use against you than the measly 7 cards in your hand. Now, the problem with this argument is it completely ignores the amount of cards that were previously in your opponent's hand and the amount of cards previously in your hand. And a lot of people will say, well, that doesn't matter because what's being said is still true. You're still drawing your opponent's 21 cards, so why do I care about how many cards were previously in any of the player's hand? Let me give you a scenario that's a little bit hyperbolic, but not crazy either. Let's say we only have 1 card in our hand, the wheel effect, and then at least one of our opponents has 7 cards in hand. If we cast that wheel and no one counters it, it's going to allow us to draw into a fresh new grip, and our opponent is literally just discarding 7 cards and drawing 7 new cards, which I argue is not very good at all. Sometimes it can even cause players to discard their win con, and as for you, you literally had no cards in hand, and now you have a fresh new grip. So what do you think increases your odds of winning the game more? Having cards in your hand or having no cards in your hand? When I put it to you that way, the answer seems pretty simple. The wheel effect kept you in the game. Let me give you another scenario that every player's ran into at one point. The arch enemy. At one point, one player just drew into an insane hand. They get their arcane, they get their signet off, and now they're ahead of everybody else. They've already got their card draw engine online, and they've got a fresh new grip. Everybody else at this point is kind of running out of steam. Wheel effect can help everybody get back into the game and stop the arch enemy. At this point, you're happy to draw your opponents into more removal because you know none of that removal is coming your way. And then after you cast the wheel effect, you can casually ask, did anybody get anything to stop that guy? And if they say yes, you can actually just say, all right, well then I'm going to farther my board state. They're going to stop him. And at that point, the wheel again increased your odds of winning because you're not only stopping your opponent, you're also farthering your board state and you freshed up your grip as well. I want to talk about the Storm archetype for a second because the Storm archetype is one of the archetypes that I think benefits most off wheels that isn't a dedicated wheel strategy. The Storm archetype has you casting cantrips, cards that replace themselves over and over again to trigger all of your instant and sorcery payoffs like your gutter snipes. The problem is eventually you will run out of cantrips, so you want to cast a Past in Flames or something to get access to your graveyard. Something that can also help you find the key pieces you need is a wheel effect. After you've cast all your cantrips, gotten all your advantage pieces on the board, casting a wheel effect to refill your entire hand will cause you to continue on your storm turn. A lot of the times you actually don't have to pass the turn after casting a wheel effect, and that leaves me to one of my other points. If you are just casting a wheel effect and then passing the turn, you probably are increasing your opponent's win rate. You want to be casting a wheel when you have an opportunity to cast spells after, that way you're not just giving your opponent's cards and passing the turn. Kind of like a board wipe. The person that board wipes is hurt the most because they just spent 6 mana and then passed the turn, and then everybody else gets to rebuild first. That's why you want your board wipes to be asymmetrical. That way they don't affect your board state and they affect your opponents. That way they're having to rebuild and you don't lose anything. Wheels, kind of the same thing. You want to be able to deploy your resources after you cast your wheel, not, after everybody else has already deployed their resources. The next archetype I want to talk about is Reanimation, but specifically Reanimation that cares about our opponent's graveyard. Wheel effects can be some of the most efficient ways to fill your opponent's graveyard and fast. And what's so cool about this is you're always casting wheel effects into your opponents having pretty big hands. You want to cast a Windfall and have them discard 5 cards. You don't want to cast a Windfall and have them discard 2 cards. So again, it's important to notice when you're casting the spell. There's also cards like Dark Deal that turns it into a discard effect because everybody's going to draw cards equal to the amount of cards in their hand they previously had -1. So there are wheel effects that end up net negative that are really good for reanimation strategies. And remember, Windfall is only going to make sure everybody's on an even playing field. If someone discards 6 cards, everybody's only going to draw 6. And remember, you are playing a strategy that benefits off of everybody's graveyard, so at the end of the day, you're just filling up their graveyard, getting ready for your win con, and you're going to be the one that benefits off of these wheels in the long run. Wheel effects can also double as those things that we hate. Vegetables. I'm a casual player. I like to put threats on the board, and I just like to keep putting threats on the board until either I'm stopped or I win the game. I don't like to dedicate a huge portion of my deck from stopping my opponents from winning. I know I'm a dirty casual. That's not saying I don't run any, but it's saying that the #1 goal of my deck is not to stop my opponents from winning the game, if that makes sense. Echoes of Aeon can kind of be 2 things in one. Not only is it card advantage, it's additionally graveyard hate. We can even cast this from our graveyard, so you get 2 casts of this per game. It allows everybody to shuffle their entire graveyard into their library and then draw a fresh new 7. So everybody's at the same starting point now, right? Not exactly, because you have a massive board state that you've set up and you've gotten ready to cast this. Another thing that's really good about Echoes of Aeon is it counts as a shuffler effect, right? If you have decks where you might mill out, sometimes just having that shuffler effect is that last thing you need to end out the game. That way you don't deck yourself and die. I hope this video helped understand the nuances of wheel effects for new and old players alike. I also understand that everybody in the comments down below is going to have a story on when a wheel effect immediately lost them a game because someone casted it when they should not have. But it's important to note that that's not the wheel's fault, that's the player's fault. And that player will eventually learn, oh, I should not have casted a wheel there, that just lost me the game. And you can't evolve as a player if you just write out an entire card type when you're not playing a dedicated wheel strategy. So again, I hope that helps, and I'll see you guys in the next one.